There's a trolley behind you. Yeah. Can you lift it, the other end?
Okay.
I mean, I think really we should never have been on trial. We didn't put anyone or anything in danger. It was the Home Office who should have been on trial because they put people in danger every single day.
You're making chilli.
Hello, Lindsay.
Hey, hon, how you doing?
Not so bad. What time does your court start tomorrow, Lindsay?
Tomorrow we start at 10.
Okay, slice that one up.
It starts with someone I met who'd been threatened with deportation. He was the first person I ever heard mention that word. And he was a student in the middle of his studies, and I thought, this is terrible, I really want to help him. This must be a one-off. And then I slowly learned that human rights abuses are happening under our noses every day.
Oh, can someone help me?
Unbelievable, you're first aider.
First aider, and they won't let me help this woman who's clearly in pain.
If you drag him, you will break his neck. Do not drag him, you are on camera.
There's a huge detention centre at Gatwick where people are incarcerated, people who have often lived in this country for longer than I've been alive.
And it's a process that's very little known about, and it's quite shocking to imagine that people can be locked up without committing any crime, locked up and held indefinitely.
I know from my volunteering that it's commonplace for people to be deported without having their claims properly heard. I became extremely concerned about the people on the flight.
I can't know this and not do something about it. We had to stop that plane.
This case is about 15 activists who on the 20th of March 2017 stopped a charter flight from leaving Stansted airport. They went to a remote part of the airport, basically a loading area, a parking lot for airplanes.
The aeroplane that they approached was at the time getting ready for a flight. It didn't have its main engines running. There weren't any passengers on board at the time.
And they surrounded the plane and put a banner, they held up a banner, showing what they were protesting about. The authorities knew immediately what this was about. They all had t-shirts that showed what they were protesting about, and they had pink hats on. They were as about non-threatening as you can possibly be. Normally, these sorts of protests attract charges such as aggravated trespass. These are minor charges which are normally dealt with in the magistrates' court. 3 months after being charged with that offence, it was suddenly changed to a terrorism type offence which attracts life imprisonment. In 20 years as a lawyer, I have never experienced a charge being changed from one where you can only get 3 months as a maximum to one where you can get life imprisonment.
Since the Crown Prosecution Service changed the charges to this endangerment offence, a piece of terrorist related legislation that carries a maximum of life imprisonment, it's been a bit like living in a nightmare, to be honest. It's just we never expected this kind of charge, and it's been terrifying to face it. It's just had massive impacts for everyone, and it's affected all of our lives in so many different ways.
This charge is under the Aviation and Maritime Securities Act. This is a piece of legislation that was brought in after the Lockerbie bombing. It is used to implement our international treaty obligations about terrorism. It was never and has never been used against peaceful protesters.
There's been a huge number of developments, I think, in the peaceful protest cases in this country. And the one which really grabbed the headlines was anti-fracking protesters, which occurred early this year. Very draconian sentences were passed. And there were those who were absolutely incensed at the court who had locked up these people. After the Court of Appeal had quashed the sentences, there was huge celebration.
When people peacefully break the law out of a moral obligation to prevent the expansion of fossil fuel industries, they should not be sent to prison.
But there was something that really appeared to me to grip the country about that right to protest, that people do not want to go back to those times when the suffragettes were thrown into prison, where they were force-fed. And so I think that memory is still there. And what happened to those protesters in the anti-fracking case triggered a fear. Are we sliding backwards?
Amnesty UK is observing this trial because we're concerned about the effect that it could have on peaceful protest in Britain. And we know that there are many countries around the world where human rights defenders are stopped and harassed and hurt by the authorities simply for standing up for human rights. And we do not want the UK to become such a place.
I know that the Home Office make bad decisions routinely, that they are immediately suspicious of people, that people with good claims are being refused for no good reason.
Yeah, you are. You're within your own standard. What have I done?
They get dragged from their families, their homes. We're the only country in Europe that holds people indefinitely. And these aren't criminals, these are people like you or me.
Of the people that we knew about, one of them expressed concern as a lesbian woman that she would be persecuted on return to Nigeria. Now, I'm aware that Nigeria has some of the most draconian laws for LGBT people in the world.
This is the woman's testimony. My ex-husband says he knows I am being deported next week. He is waiting for me. He is planning to kill me. I thought in the UK I would be able to be lesbian and live free. I am begging.
That was very disturbing.
She'd lived in this country for going on 30 years. And to be snatched out of your environment, out of your community, to be thrown into Yarlswood, and then to be told with only a few hours' notice that you were going to be deported, her body literally shut down with the shock.
She was meant to be removed on that day. Thanks to the Stansted 15, and because of their actions, she was not removed to what would be potentially life-threatening in terms of her return to Nigeria.
Then she says, what Stansted 15 did when they stopped that plane was to give a voice to people whose voice had been taken from them. My life was saved that night, and I will never forget that. I was one of the lucky few. My removal from the plane gave me two life-changing gifts. The first was a chance to appeal to the authorities over my deportation, a case which I won, but more importantly, the brave actions of the Stansted 15 gave me something even more special, the chance to be by my partner's side as she gave birth to our daughter.
Because we stopped that plane, he was able to be with her when she was giving birth. He's now in the UK with his partner, with his child. He's finally been granted leave to remain.
It's that simple. Now we have a chance to live together as a family in Britain, and that is thanks to the people who lay down in front of the plane.
If those very desperate individuals can't access justice, they can't get lawyers because of the hostile environment and everything that the hostile environment has done in reducing legal aid, in reducing appeal rights, and reducing the ability to access lawyers, then you will see people who want to help, who want to intervene and stop these people from effectively being returned to torture and to death. They will intervene in ways where lawyers can no longer assist.
So we've just been hearing the judge, during which he's meant to give an impartial representation of the evidence that has come before the court. From where I was sitting, it didn't feel like that was what was happening.
Yes, and our lawyers tried to raise this with the judge when the jury were not in the room, but the judge told our lawyer to sit down and he didn't want to hear any further.
It certainly didn't feel at all neutral to me.
This particular charge was put into place to criminalise violent acts at airport, and we are a peaceful direct action. How on earth has this charge been allowed to be used on us on a 9-week, very expensive trial? How is this in the public interest? If we live in a democracy, these things should be transparent and we should have access to what basis this charge was put on us, how much this cost, etc., and that's not forthcoming.
The defendants absolutely felt that all other options had been exhausted. They've tried contacting MPs, they've tried contacting lawyers, but nothing has worked.
What we must see now is an immediate end to this kind of cruel, inhumane, really brutal practice. And actually we need a full public inquiry into the government's hostile environment. This can't go on.
The prosecution have sought to use a trial where immigration has been key, and they've sought to use words like swarm of activists and sought to play on people's prejudices. This is a Home Office that has deported British citizens through Windrush, and indeed some Windrush individuals might well have been on the flight that night, and the Home Office have not responded.
Tomorrow the judge will do his summing up, and then the following day the jury will retire to consider their verdict.
How are you feeling about that?
I'm trying to cultivate courage.
What they had done is ask huge questions of how we manage our borders, whether we actually can be bothered by the most vulnerable people who come to our shores. So it became an absolutely no-brainer to welcome into our house. And much to our surprise, we actually found we loved them. I mean, they could have been the most scary, moralistic, righteous people.
I have no idea how we would have got through this without people across Chelmsford holding each one of the defendants in their homes, in their hearts, and being in the courtroom with us as we go through this has just transformed the experience from something very challenging and difficult to one that is surrounded by positivity and support and love.
I've sat in court whilst their background has been read out, the things that they've done, the causes that they've supported, and I am just nothing short of gobsmacked at their integrity and sincerity and the care they give other people. I was determined that I would do everything I could to support them because I truly believe what this says. Our asylum process is state torture.
Well, they've got half an hour.
Are you coming now?
We've seen films of the people being handcuffed and taken onto the aeroplanes, and I've got friends who've been through the same thing. It is a very, very scary part of the unseen Britain, I suppose. We really worry for them.
Conviction of the Stansted 15 is a devastation, miscarriage of justice. It is very concerning indeed to use terror legislation on people who are peacefully protesting.
For 10 weeks, we've been sitting in a dock, mostly silent, sitting accused of a crime which is totally inappropriate for what we did.
If the Home Office respected human rights, then we would not have to lay our liberty on the line to defend it.
I believe in the goodness of humanity. That's what we have to hold on to in the coming months and years ahead. And these 15 have shown what good humans can do. I think it's quite clear, you're not alone.